I'm Camille Utterback. I'm an artist. I've been working for a long time using technology as my medium, specifically software that I write. And I do that because it allows me to take a sensor like a camera, or sometimes I've used touch sensors, other ways I can get information about the world into the computer, and then I write software that reacts to that. And what's interesting to me about that is it allows me to create systems that react to your body in real time. So it allows you to feel like you're maybe in another space, or you have influence on this computer-generated space. So for me, it's really not in the end about the technology or the computers, but about how do you think about yourself in relation to systems. So the code I'm writing is a set of rules, and it's interesting for me to create a situation where you, as the participant in that system, because it's reacting to you, have to kind of think about why might it be doing that, or what is it doing if I stick out my hand or touch something, like how is my presence being, having an impact in this system. So I think that's an important question for all of us, because we're all part of all different kinds of systems, not just our technological systems. And the more I feel like as an artist, I can create a space where people start thinking about those rules and why is it reacting this way, or what if I do this, that hopefully gets them thinking about their role in the world in general. So Entangled is a piece that builds on drawing systems I've been doing for a long time that use cameras on the ceiling to watch the space, and based on how people are moving in the space, all these different images evolve. It's often based on people's trajectories and paths, and things get added to the system and then you can push them around. For a long time, those systems were more simple in the sense there was a projection on the wall and the camera looking at the space. And part of my work lately, I've been really questioning or just getting tired of screens that are everywhere, flat screens that really don't use our depth perception at all. So part of what I wanted to do with this piece was create a display situation that was much richer. So I got excited about projecting through this set of scrims. So part of what's different about this drawing system is it's not a projection onto a flat wall, but onto this set of scrims. But then the opportunity there is that people can see each other through the scrims. So I decided to make a work that is two-sided, and people on both sides of the set of scrims are influencing the system. But you can only influence what is being projected from one side, not the other. So you are in control of some aspects of this situation, but not all of them. And I think that is also stemming from kind of getting more and more concerned about how a lot of our technological systems are completely egomaniacal, maybe. Like, they're all about you. It's all about you. Everything's about you, and this illusion that you're in control of everything. So I want people to think a little bit about what does it mean when you're part of a system but you don't have complete control. In fact, it's a shared space that's shared with the people on the other side of the scrim, and so how do you negotiate that in a real physical space? So I'm kind of old and really remember a time before people had computers in their houses at all. I did when I was maybe 10 or something. We had an Apple II, and I used it to do my math homework. Like, I wrote a program to calculate the surface area of cubes, which we had to do over and over again, and I thought that was really absurdly boring. And so I wrote a program, and I think my parents were trying to figure out, is it okay, is that cheating, or was I really doing the homework assignment? So I remember that very vividly. But then I fell into the statistic of girls that decide technology and science is not really cool. So there's been a lot of research that happened. I remember going to a programming class when I was like 13, because I wanted to learn more programming, and I just quit. So it's interesting to go back, like, what was going on, like what were the subtle cues I was getting that I didn't belong, or we were going to do something I wasn't interested, or something like that. So, but I wanted nothing to do with computers then, like all the way through college. I thought they were horrible, but granted, they were a lot less powerful, and the graphics were a lot less interesting than they are now. But when I got excited about them again was kind of at the early era of the internet becoming popular and these things called CD-ROMs, which some people may remember, and the idea that you could, within this CD-ROM, create a whole little world that had maybe sounds and graphics and a way of creating stories in it. So again, the idea that I could create a whole situation that, at that point it wasn't using like a camera input, it was just you could click or you could use text. And that I got really excited that was the kind of world that I felt like I could use my artistic skills in, but that it could also be sort of part of our culture at that time and now continuing on. So my undergrad degree is in art, but I used much more traditional media. And I think I was just frustrated when I graduated and was like trying to sell paintings and working in that media that, granted I wasn't having huge success within that medium at that time, but I felt kind of marginalized culturally, like my work wasn't being seen in a place where there was a real dialogue going on around it. Part of that had to do with where I was too. At the time was a kind of conservative place, so I think moving into technology at the time I did, and then moving to New York to go to the grad school I did, like all of a sudden my work was being seen and in dialogue with other works, and the questions about like what can we do with this technology, people were really thinking about them. So I actually thought when the more I started learning about programming, things like that, that I was moving away from being an artist. So the irony is that the projects I started making using those skills and that medium are actually what people became the most interested in, and now I've been able to keep making that work for a long time, which is fantastic. So I think play, which I would define as a kind of experimental questioning and testing, is really important to how we learn. And I also think there's a political aspect of that too, which is that you're testing the boundaries of things when you play often, like, how much sand can I pile up before it falls over, or or it's about finding the limits of things sometimes, or finding a new way to engage with something. So I feel like creating systems that reward that play, like something exciting is happening depending on what you're doing, or you can run fast, or you can move slowly, or you can try to engage with the system with other people. The more interesting ways I can build in for these systems to respond to different playful activities, I feel like that encourages people, again, to ask those questions and test things out. And that to me is such a wonderful thing to be adding into the world, to have more people engaging that way with their surroundings and each other too. It's often very social, which is wonderful. I think on some level, technology is neutral in that we as humans can choose to use it in lots of different ways. But that being said, we also have tools and platforms that already have a lot of assumptions built into them. Like a computer with a keyboard and a mouse assumes you just are fingers, basically, and only can move things in an XY plane. And the screen, you don't even have two eyes. It's not even stereo information. So there's a lot of assumptions in that about who we are or how we can engage with the world. So in my pieces, even by adding a camera where I can see people's outlines and where they are in a bigger physical space, that's a different kind of assumption about the world in the tool set I've created or in the technology I've created or working with. So it's not neutral. It's not completely neutral. There's so many layers of choices that have a huge impact on, on a very just basic level, how we are represented in that technology. And then, of course, all the conversations we're having now about how things like social media encourage us to be more and more extreme or something like that. That's part of the affordance of that technology, because the people that are making it want you to click more and more, and we like to click on extreme things, right? So I think we can choose to use technology for really wonderful purposes, but it can also go to some very scary places. And what's important is that people, I think, learn to look at the assumptions in any particular system and question those or think about how they could possibly be different. So in terms of how I think about technology also, I think that the more people that can learn how to code software, the more we'll be able to question the systems that are really like the infrastructure of our world right now. So I think that it's super important to have different kinds of people able to make those systems and question what is being written like literally into that infrastructure. And I think artists have a super important role there because of this idea of playfulness, because of a kind of irreverence for how a system maybe is supposed to work, or even humor, that kind of sideways look or questioning look at those things can sometimes reveal to us the assumptions we didn't even think about. So I think it's an exciting place to be working, but I really hope more and more people choose to work in this medium. I think it's so exciting that Oklahoma Contemporary is free so that so many different people can come and experience this work. I also think as an artist, it's the places where I've been able to experience art in a casual way, meaning I can come back or I can stay for 10 minutes, feeling like that work is something I can have a relationship with, is when it really starts to become exciting. I mean, it can always be exciting, even if you can see it for, an afternoon. But I think the more people can come and spend time with a set of works and see them when they're in different moods or, with other people, the relationship really gets richer. And especially having the range of works that are in Bright Golden Haze that do use technology in different ways, I think for anyone, or particularly kids, but really anyone, to understand the different media that artists work in now is really exciting. So Entangled uses light to create space in 3 ways, I think. It has 2 cameras looking at the space, one on each side of the scrims, which is how the piece reacts to people, and cameras are just light sensors. So they're just looking at the light and dark shapes in the space, and that's how I deduce that there are people here. So that's one way. The projection coming onto both sides of the scrims creates this hazy kind of hanging apparition in the space, which has a really beautiful sensuality through the light hitting the scrims. So the visual aspect of the work is only there because of light, well, and I guess the scrim, but light hitting the scrims. And then there's 2 other theater lights that aim at the floor and create a very, very precise rectangle where the piece will react to you. So the light is also the interface design, if you will. Like, it's how people know, oh, if I'm standing in that area of the gallery, I'm in the piece, and if I'm not in the piece. So it's kind of helps you understand where the piece is. It's the graphic visual way that you experience the piece, and it's also the interface sensor for how I can tell you're here. So all 3 ways. I am just absolutely thrilled to be in this show because for me it's both being included in an exhibition with many of my heroes as well as many of my friends. So I know some of the other artists and have known them for a really long time, and others I have never met, but I would love to someday because they are people I super look up to. So just being included in this context. I think often this kind of work, because it's quite hard to install, it involves plugging things in and complicated scenarios, is often shown in a much more minimal way, like 1 or 2 pieces at a time, or 1 piece like this, on its own. So whenever I'm in a show that has this amount of work that is using light and using technology in different ways, I mean, not all of the work is doing that, but even on that subject, it's just a really wonderful feeling. Leo Valario and I are both graduates of the Interactive Telecommunications program, master's program at NYU. He graduated a couple years ahead of me, I think, but I met him when I was there. He was actually teaching a class, which was really important for me. The program is really about questioning technology and learning to use it in different ways. It's not necessarily, there are artists there, but it's not an MFA program. And so to have someone else as a teacher who really was thinking about the technology from an artistic point of view and what could we do in the worlds we could create that really transformed people, that was a very important class for me. And so I've known him for many years since that time, and our careers have gone in different ways and overlapped here and there. We've competed for commissions from time to time. So it's great to be in a show with him.